Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very senior corporate leader and a respected marketing and branding professional from Mumbai, India, Asha Kharga. Asha, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh. Wonderful to meet you.
Thank you. Asha is the Chief Customer and Brand Officer and a member of the Group Executive Board of the Mahindra Group. She's the chairperson of the FICCI Committee for Women Empowerment in 2024 and chairs Mahindra Group's Diversity Council. Asha has worked with J. Walter Thompson, Unilever, and Axis Bank, and given the amazing work she's done in her career so far, understandably, she's been recognized, awarded, and felicitated several times. So, Asha, let me start by asking you, because you have such an amazing career, tell me a little bit about the stages of your career and how you transitioned from product marketing to managing corporate brands.
Thanks, Ashutosh. I think conversations like these are an opportunity to really reflect on the past. So it's the past 27 years encapsulated into three phases, I would think. The first phase I would describe as my journey in advertising, which was really a foundation for creative strategy. The second phase I describe as product marketing and really market development, largely spent with HUL. And the third phase I would think is where I am today, which is what I call a strategic phase, more of a leadership role, handling very diverse conglomerate, 80 years old, and therefore quite an expansive role. So if I had to break this journey, the first one, which I said about the foundational role in advertising, was really about spending time in shaping communication on the basis of sharp consumer insight. And I remember I cut my teeth on HUL and P&G, which was really the bedrock of good consumer understanding. I remember spending 100 hours meeting consumers before you could actually offer a point of view on a consumer insight. So those were fundamental years. I learned the balance between process. They have really strong processes in terms of developing communication. And I also honed my instincts, and that balance between instinct and process to create effective communication was something that I picked up in advertising. It also teaches you agility because you have to respond really quickly to the market. But ultimately, all the insights and observations are effective only if you create great communication, communication that resonates and is able to break the clutter in the market. The second phase, which I just described, was really a journey into product marketing. I felt that I'd almost spent a decade in advertising, and I felt that I need to really go beyond just creating awareness. And I think really understanding the entire mix, and a company like Levers really is a temple in terms of teaching you marketing. So I think I was really lucky because I was a lateral hire. I didn't join from campus, and I lasted, or rather, I thrived in Levers for 9 years. I enjoyed Levers completely, and I think I learned the value of the mix. I learned cross-functional teams and collaborations, and I learned go-to-market, and realized that advertising and awareness is just one part of it, and you really need to get the product right. Your first dollar goes into product, your second dollar goes into distribution, and then if you have anything left, you actually put it into awareness.
Correct.
So that was really fundamental, and of course, from there I moved to Axis. I enjoyed the bank immensely. Shikha Sharma was the leader at that time. I'll talk a bit about what the bank experience was, but when I pull back into really looking after a large corporate brand, I think I've reached a stage in my career where I felt that I've done individual products. And I think if you really look at tying all these products into a large corporate like Mahindra, whether it's automotive, whether it's farm, whether it's finance, technology, and the whole host of industries that we operate in, what is the storytelling that really ties these diverse group of companies? How do you look at long-term brand building, and how do you really have your eye on reputation of the group
Right.
And without actually forgetting the role of employees and the role of culture and what it takes to build a complete brand. So in that sense, I feel this is all about joining the dots, Ashutosh. I mean, I don't think I got into something thinking this is what I'm going to do. But but when you reflect and you look back, I learned agility and creativity in advertising. I learned product segmentation and portfolio in marketing at Levers, and I think I learned about long-term brand building and reputation in a big way at Mahindra.
What a great response. And yet, Asha, given the fact that you were handling so many different product brands and now are overseeing a corporate brand, what are some of the differences that you see in these two, and how have you adapted?
Yes, it's a good question, Ashutosh. In fact, I think when I look back and I think about product, you know very clearly what are the needs of the consumer, and you know what are the benefits you offer from a product. In that sense, it's simpler because you really know your TG very well, and it's about ensuring that the needs match with the benefits of the product. You have to kind of get a product win. You have to price it at the right price value equation, and you have to make sure the distribution is right and you create awareness around it. Corporate is actually quite abstract if one had to look at it that way. And what we have tried to do is to really bring some method to how does one look at corporate brand and its presence. I think the first thing that I learned, and this was also due to my Unilever experience, because Unilever took pole position when it came to sustainability under the leadership of Paul Polman more than a decade ago. And I was a part of the team that worked with Nitin Paranjpe and then with Sanjeev Mehta when we launched the Unilever Sustainable Living Plan. So I launched it when I was in HUL. And in that sense, some bit of that grounding and that understanding helped me in my journey at Mahindra. So my first understanding was when I walked into an 80-year-old organization was to really understand the philosophy of RISE. And when I came in, I thought it was quite abstract, and it's quite tempting for a new marketing person to walk into an organization and say, let me just change this. Let me just find a new way to say something and let me figure out a new idea. But my biggest learning was that when it comes to corporate philosophies, your most important stakeholder is also your internal employees, and we are 250,000 employees across the world. So you realize it's something very precious, and you must have the maturity to be patient and understand what does this mean for people. So what we tried to do was to really refresh RISE for the contemporary world. And the reason I say contemporary is because I joined in the post-COVID phase, and a lot of the messaging around RISE needed to be refreshed for the new world that was emerging in post-COVID. So we have now created a framework around RISE, which is very simple. It's basically a 3-pillar framework, and it talks about RISE to create a more equal world, which is nothing but humanizing ESG. RISE to be future ready, which is nothing but always have a customer focus. Make sure you're creating digital twins in the business. Make sure you are future ready in that sense. And the third is about creating value.
Correct.
And we got in value creation into a purpose framework, which at that time a lot of people questioned, because when you think about corporate philosophy, you just think about doing good. And we felt that there is no shame in actually saying that profit is equally important, and profit will follow purpose.
Correct.
But only corporates which are actually doing good for humanity only corporates which are doing good financially can actually have a say in humanity. Because otherwise, and you have to create value for all stakeholders. So only when we enable others to rise will we rise was actually a refresh that we brought in. And I'm very delighted to see that in the last 3 years, a lot of the businesses across Mahindra are actually living those pillars, whether it's about our ESG focus, whether it's about building future-ready businesses, the way if you look at our auto portfolio, it's also about creating electric vehicles for the future. It's about digital products, the role of technology, and it's about creating value through scale, and innovation. So I think that's really fundamental to the RISE philosophy. And at the bedrock of it, I think the values always remain consistent. That to me is a big shift. In product marketing, you may not think about values as much. You're really thinking about fulfilling consumer needs. But the values of Mahindra, which is about customer focused quality, and the one that I really admire the most, which is dignity of the individual. I think I've not seen that in any organization, and I think that's quite special to Mahindra. Is really something that I find
What
to
a
be a
great
shift.
response. Well said. Well said. But Asha, as you just mentioned, 80-year-old organization, 250,000 employees. God knows how many, I mean, I don't, how many different brands or how many different businesses carry the Mahindra brand. What does it mean to be a brand custodian for a global group like Mahindra?
That's a good question, Ashutosh. I think I had read about brand custodianship really in a theoretical sense. And when you're a marketing manager or a product manager, in that sense, you are the custodian of your brand. Um, but I think when you come into a corporate role, it assumes very different proportions.
Correct.
And to just make this practical, I think I look at it from two dimensions. The first dimension is really about reputation. And in an organization with a very expansive footprint like ours, in today's world of social media, uh, the reputation aspect becomes really important. And I'm saying this because in an earlier world, if somebody wrote about you in a negative way, it was restricted to print or television, and it goes into the newspaper. Usually goes into raddi, as we call it. So it's okay. It's not there for posterity.
Right.
It will probably be spoken about in internal corporate circles. But today's world, whatever remains on the internet is there for posterity. 2 years later, it can come to you on a WhatsApp message. And I think it's really important for corporates to respond with agility and humility, because in a business as wide as ours, as large as ours, issues can crop up anywhere. Right. So any customer who walks into a dealership and um, and and feels slighted because he was not handled well by the staff, is a ripe opportunity for reputation, saying that here is Goliath and here is David. And large corporates versus a single individual, public sentiment will always be towards the individual. So I think one of the things that we do is, especially when it comes to health, safety, and dignity of the individual, we treat it with utmost agility, and we make sure that we have a response very quickly. I think corporates that do not respond are seen as arrogant, and we are. I would say we almost treat it like a war room, and like the way you typically have war rooms for launches, or we have that kind of a war room even for crisis management. And again, it's not left only to the marketing team or the communications team. I think all our leadership, including the CEOs of the business, are very well integrated into reputation. And that's really the role for a brand custodian, which is why I sit on the group executive board. And that's why it's not seen as a support function, but more of a function which works and collaborates very well, because this is really long-term equity. And therefore, it needs that kind of focus. The second aspect, other than reputation, is to do with customer centricity. And there we actually look at net promoter scores. And imagine, 12 industries, 12 different types of customers in each of those industries, and really measuring how do customers really talk about us. Are they really advocating for us? And measuring them and giving insights to the business in terms of why are they rating you high or why are they rating you low, is again a focus area from a custodianship point of view. And it allows you to be strategic. It allows you to see what are the opportunities, and and allows you to build a customer-centric organization. So these two, I would think, Ashutosh, are really very, what shall I say, very tangible aspects of brand custodianship. And given that the expanse is so large,
Yeah.
It's actually almost an everyday affair. And I actually look forward to boring days when nobody talks about you or nobody asks anything about you or comments on you.
Absolutely. Very well
Yeah.
said. But I remember when I started my career with ITC in 1979, one of the first places that I observed people had the ability to make any change was on their visiting card. And everyone had a visiting card which was printed the way they wanted, and the logo would be all over the place. My question to you is what is the role of internal communication and culture within a group as big as yours to maintain the brand's external reputation?
That's so true. And even, in fact, on the logo bit, I didn't answer, but actually to ensure that everybody carries, or
Correct.
rather represents the logo in the right way, with the right colors and the
Yeah.
right and the right representation is very important. But come from an internal point of view, I think again 250,000 employees. So when we were talking about the rise refresh that I spoke about, the three pillars. Um, we first actually spent 8 months in cascading those pillars internally. Because the last thing you want to do is to project this externally from an external narrative point of view when internally people have not understood it or imbibed it. And I think we took that time to make sure that everybody understood the refreshed philosophy and why we were calling out for that refresh. The second bit is, in terms of defining our behaviors, we have called out ECAB, which is ethics, collaborative agility, and boldness as key behaviors. And, I want to talk a little bit about the behaviors because sometimes you think of them as these generic words and wonder what is agility and boldness. And I experienced agility and boldness when I first joined the organization. This was around 2021. And August 2021, we had the launch of the XUV 700. And I had gone to Chennai for the launch. And, we saw this really stunning looking vehicle. I saw it for the first time, and I just thought it looked so, it looked so impressive. And when I saw the technology and just the experience was so smooth. And in the morning of the launch, we were having this conversation with our dealers on the pricing, of the vehicles. And much to my surprise, they actually said the vehicle should cost somewhere between 13 to 17 lakhs. And I thought it looked like a 25 lakh vehicle. We all know that today, actually, that price point, which is the premium price point of 25 lakhs, is actually contributing to 80% of the portfolio. But at that time, they said Mahindra is punching above its weight if it goes above 20. The ideal sweet spot is 13 to 17. And the ED of the business was there, and which is Rajesh Jejurikar, and he, I saw decision making happen with such agility and what I call boldness. In 2 hours, we took a decision to price and launch it at 11.99. And Rajesh's advice or guidance around it was that we should give the customers what they're least expecting. If we price, and I think the pricing was 12.65, and he said that if you're at 13, 12.65 is not going to seem like an aberration. But if you price it at 11.99, and I actually thought this is Bata pricing, but I thought it was least expected, and every single headline which really went live at that time was XUV 700 launches at an incredible price of 11.99.
Correct.
And I thought that decision, while we think about the success today, but the way the decision was taken, the boldness and the agility, it was taken 2 hours before the launch. I think it was done in a very collaborative way. Anish was there. In fact, Anish was actually, a part of the dealer conversation. So he had these conversations, and after some 6 dealer focus groups, this point came across, and then they took the decision in a very collaborative sort of way with agility and boldness. So it really came to life. And I think when leadership starts demonstrating those behaviors, the front line follows. So I've seen it demonstrated really well even at dealerships, and the way our salespeople respond with agility to any customer issue. So that to me is a very integral point from a customer point of view. So both this aspect of, what's the RISE philosophy and what are the actions that you take on a daily basis in the business, which is about being collaborative, agile, and bold, to me are significant aspects of internal communication.
Well said, well said. And I must tell you, I want to ask you a question, customer experience. But I've owned every major brand as a car owner all my life. I'd never owned an SUV in India or when we were outside India. And the first SUV that I purchased was the Mahindra XUV 700 or 700, as you mentioned, the L. And the experience has been absolutely incredible. We have other cars. My wife uses them, but my go-to car is the Mahindra, and that just says a lot about the customer experience. But I wanted to ask you, as a follow-up question of customer experience, is what is the core brand proposition of Mahindra, and how do you ensure it resonates with your customers globally?
That's an interesting question, and thank you for choosing the XUV 700. In fact, I think with our latest portfolio of products, we've been able to get a lot of buyers who would not consider Mahindra in the past because of its ruggedness and because of the tough the tough projection that it has. But I think a lot of refinement and sophistication has come into the product, which has appealed to a lot of people like you. So I'm grateful that you have chosen us, and thank you for the compliments around the product.
Kind of you to say that.
Yes, and as far as building a global brand is concerned, I just wanted to share again 2 or 3 examples. One of the things that I was really surprised to hear when I joined Mahindra is that it's the largest tractor company in the world, and it has a significant presence in the US. The Mahindra tractor business, and close to a $600 million business in the US. And I think what's maybe I can share a bit about the other examples too. The second is the pickup business, the Mahindra pickup SUV, which is there in Australia, New Zealand, and in South Africa, and that's also a geography where we have done pretty well. And the pickup SUV has an attachment which is like a carriage van, which allows a lot of people to to carry tents when they go camping, and that has again been designed for the market. And I think what is fundamental to both these is really being very relevant to consumers in those markets. So if you look at the tractor business in the US, it's actually targeted towards rural lifestylers, very unlike in India, which is towards smallholder farmers. It actually talks to a very different segment. So these are rural lifestylers in the sense that they actually have their own vegetable patch, and they actually do hobby farming. And therefore the sleekness and the kind of power that this particular tractor has is customized for that market.
Right.
The dealerships through which we sell are actually family-owned businesses. So most of the dealers are actually from the community, and we have had fantastic relationships with them for the last 30 years odd. And the content that we create for these customers, again, is through a creative partner based in the US who understands this segment of consumers. So I think when Mahindra operates in those markets, they actually don't think about it from, let us try to control this centrally from India, because that customer segment is different, that product is different, and their psychographic profiles are very, very different from Indian farmers. Similarly, for Australia, New Zealand, for example, when I spoke about the carriage van, which is attached to the pickup, now that's a very different segment. You don't see that in India. And again, you have to adapt the product to that market. The agencies that we work with are again from ANZ and South Africa, and we tailor-make communication for that. So I think if I had to pull back, I think it's again the fundamental principles of market: be relevant to the audience you're talking to, talk to them in the language that they are most comfortable with, and decentralize. I think that's very important, because sometimes, and it happens with many global brands, right? They send you communication from the US or the UK, and I think we are quite comfortable with the fact that we may not understand those segments very well. Let those markets develop it in a more agile way, and we've seen the results. So, and of course, I must mention to you about the Mahindra design studio in the UK, which is actually run by Pratap Bose, and he sits out of our UK office. We have a team of global designers actually creating products for the whole world.
Wow.
And I think to have a team that sits there, which actually brings in a different perspective, is also important.
Amazing.
To create a global brand. So I think, again, because of the ethos of the organization, we seem to be working pretty well across geographies in a agile, bold, and collaborative sort of way, and really empowering businesses to be able to run their show in the way they should.
Fantastic. Asha, I have time for one more question relating to Mahindra, and then I want to move to empowering women. You know, I was in Calcutta 2 weeks ago, and puja celebrations, and in lots of places I would see the Mahindra brand there, and I'm seeing it in Delhi and newspapers. And so my question is, how do Mahindra's festival and cultural initiatives contribute to the overall brand experience for customers?
So, Ashutosh, this is again, what I call a very strategic part of the Mahindra brand. So the festival started more than 2 decades ago. And we have 6 festivals. There is the theatre festival in Delhi, which is Meta. Then you have the Mahindra Blues and Mahindra Rock in Bombay. You have Sanat Kada in Lucknow. You have Percussion in Bangalore. And I think I'm forgetting one, or I've covered, actually, no, I've covered all of them. But basically you have, and of course you have the Mahindra Kabira festival in Varanasi. And you see they are across the length and breadth of the country. They're strategic, they're not CSR. And the reason I say so is because, it goes back to the RISE philosophy. In 1945, we released a print ad in the Times of India, 8th November 1945. And that ad actually spoke about no products or services. It actually spoke about businesses. The reason for businesses to exist is to be there for the larger good and for the good of communities. And that's essentially, the shorthand for RISE, which is to be able to connect with communities where you do not sell products or services. And the entire intent behind this, and I'm, if I look at my previous life and I think about brands, most brands go the mainstream route. Let's go after pop culture. Let's go after commercial, commercial art. That's where the money is. That's where the scale is. But Mahindra has actually subverted this entire thing. And we said we will go after festivals and art forms and music and theatre, which actually needs support from corporate brands.
Right.
So the intent is to be able to connect with communities. We actually go there and actually support arts, craftsmen and musicians, theatre artists, and give them a platform to be able to share their craft with the world. And therefore it's not CSR. It allows us to build a connect. It's also something that I feel quite happy as a marketer. We've recently partnered with Disney Hotstar, and we have got that content onto a streaming platform so that more and more people actually are aware about these festivals. And again, over here, there's no competition. I think as many corporates need to come forward to really support this, because in this rush towards progress, if you really don't look back and actually support art forms and culture, which are the essence of who we are, the new generation will really not know where all of this came from. So that's the intent, and it allows us, we don't showcase any of our products. We are not trying to get leads, or we are not doing some conversion metrics over there to see how many of us are aware and how many people came and express the need to buy a holiday or a vehicle. None of that is done.
Absolutely.
And I'm glad that it continues, and we, as I said, we actually earmark budgets for it and make sure that the festivals thrive and artisans and the craft thrives.
Amazing. So, Asha, I'm now going to move to the last segment of our conversation. I'll have time for 2 questions. You are the chair of the FICCI Committee for Women Empowerment, and you
Right.
are passionate about empowering women. Tell me a little bit about your role as the chairperson of the FICCI Committee, and how does the Mahindra Group skilling platform empower women?
That's a topic which is very close to my heart,
Yeah.
Ashutosh, and it possibly comes from my FMCG days because I spent 2 decades just spending time with women consumers, and I think now it's again women, but women in a larger context
Yeah.
beyond products.
Mhm.
So one is, when Anish, who is the group CEO and MD, became the president for the FICCI for FICCI this year.
Mhm.
He earmarked 4 initiatives. One was really manufacturing. The second was farmers and farmer progress. The third was sustainability, and the fourth was women empowerment.
Mhm.
And so I walked in, not knowing what is exactly to be done here.
Mhm.
But essentially, what we have done is to look at women essentially look at two really strong pillars in this year.
Mhm.
The first pillar is really about women in the workforce and really uh, giving a sense to corporate India as to what is the representation of women, what is the kind of advancement of women, what's the
Mhm.
attrition of women in different sectors. How do you benchmark with your industry? How do you benchmark with the best in your industry?
Mhm.
And therefore, we're actually creating a report card for women in the workforce to be given to different corporates.
Mhm.
Around 120 corporates have participated in this study.
Right.
The study is funded by the Gates Foundation, and the knowledge partner is McKinsey.
Mhm.
So we intend to launch this report in early Jan, but the showcase of it and talking about it will happen sometime in November when
Mhm.
we have the first Women Empowerment Summit in Delhi. So I'm actually quite happy that we've been able to create the first baseline study. And
Mhm.
imagine each of the 120 corporates will get a report card on how do they fare um, versus the industry and versus the best in class. Because without knowing that data, you wouldn't know where to really take actions.
Mhm.
So that's the first part. The second bit is really where I call there is an intersection between both FICCI as well as Mahindra, which is to do with skilling of women. So
Mhm.
just to give you a data point, we are 48% of the population, but we contribute 18% to the GDP.
Correct.
And if women had to actually get an equivalent representation as men, then
Mhm.
the World Bank estimates that our GDP could go up to 9%.
Absolutely.
And therefore this cannot be done only at the corporate level. You have to really look at grassroots and get more women into the workforce.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the Mahindra Group over the last decade or so has already skilled 7.6 lakh women, 760,000 women to be precise. And in the last year itself, we have skilled 228,000 women.
Mhm.
What we have set out to do, we've actually put a target to this and said that we want to skill around 1 million women by 2027.
Mhm.
So, what we are doing, Ashutosh, is to create a digital platform to
Mhm.
scale this up. And we are tying up with multiple partners to
Yeah.
create skilling programs
Mhm.
uh, which um, uh, which should be able to attract women. It's meant for women. It's built for women.
Mhm.
It's designed by both men and women, I would say.
Yeah.
But the intent is to scale this up by creating this platform, and and I'm really delighted to be speaking to you because we want more corporates to come on
Correct.
board for this exercise.
Mhm.
Skilling is not just restricted to the industries that we are in,
Yeah.
and not just skilling, but also to be able to put jobs onto that platform,
Mhm.
connect women to jobs,
Mhm.
and actually create a platform that really is helpful for women. And we are calling it Kaabil.
Mhm.
Kaabil is about Bano job ready. That's really
Fascinating.
that's really the intent. So therefore, this entire role has enabled, in that sense, a larger perspective in terms of really being able to bring purpose to life. And if you can actually, help a large segment of our population get
Mhm.
into the workforce, I think it will be really meaningful for the country in that sense.
Amazing. And on that note, Asha, I just want to say thank you so much for speaking to me about your own amazing journey. Clearly, you have pushed yourself at every different corporate to test your own capabilities, competence, understanding, passion for newer and newer roles till you are in such a major role in such a major brand. Thank you for speaking to me about the importance and understanding of managing a corporate brand like the Mahindras. Thank you for talking to me at such length about the value of a brand custodian. I think this is something which most people respect but don't understand enough. And I think you told us a lot of very, very interesting points. Thank you for speaking to me about customer experience. People say that customer experience will be a $1 trillion industry in the next 4 or 5 years, and you seem to be right on top of it. And finally, thank you for talking to me about the Mahindra skilling platform and your own role as the FICCI committee chair for women empowerment in 2024. Thank you again for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Thanks a lot, Ashutosh. It was wonderful talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.